Okay guys, so yeah, as I said, welcome to week 10 of the webinars. Today's session is going to be a little bit different to the norm. So in terms of the activity for you guys to be working on over the week, we're going to try and set a task that you can look through your video archives, some of your video footage or more recent skiing footage, and try and take out of your videos some areas that you can work on, but work on them now. So obviously things that we've been going over on all the different weeks, whether it's to do with the testing yourself in the biomechanics way, looking at areas that might show up on the video, or looking towards the latter couple of weeks where we've been looking at the bounding and plyometrics sort of jumping exercises. So that's what today's session is going to be. The other thing I wanted to do today is also, we get a lot of support from our sponsors. So the likes of Knight Frank and our Gentex FX, that if it wasn't for the guys that are supporting us now, especially during the times that we can't do our job, can't work, and planks, of course, we wouldn't be able to do this anyway. So it's a huge thanks to those guys. We haven't really mentioned them much, and we don't generally mention them. People generally see our sponsors, and got the jacket there, but just that's really something we have to do today because it's of paramount importance. So thank you guys. We really appreciate your support, and we'll keep these things going and keep everyone informed. So the thing that's been really interesting for us, what we've been watching as these sessions are going on, is that people have been sending in videos, and we thought it was really important because the analysis on the videos has been a huge way that people have improved. So trying to do those jumping exercises like we saw last week, and doing them sort of blind without actually seeing what you're doing is really difficult to see precise movements. And obviously that's what a lot of the sessions have been about, precision and getting things working correctly for skiing. So we're going to go over a few of those points on here. On the videos, we've got a couple of different things. I'm going to show you, first of all, some really good quality work that we saw going on here. I don't know if you remember from week 1 or week 2, Adrian Hamilton is a Canadian qualified instructor. This was the level of the work that he was outputting, and you can see from his video, from where he's taken off, there's a huge amount of rebound, and quite a lot of consistency in terms of keeping his symmetry. So he did some videos for us on here. Going to take you through a few of them, and what you'll see on his videos is some really good work. And I think we showed this the other week, but I'm going to show it again because it just shows what you can achieve from it. So he's using a band tied around his legs, and as he comes through, you'll just see the work using the same sort of thing as we were using, the cones. So just watching the jump as he comes through, really good consistency with his legs, and you can see he was using the exercise, and he's got a huge amount of performance coming in from that particular one, which is great. I'm going to show you some others as well. This is something from Alison. Now Alison's been working on this, and we're doing an analysis session for her later today, and she's done another video since, which has showed a huge amount of improvement. So it's good work anyway that's going on here. But if you look at what she's doing, as she jumps through, I'm going to pause it on an area where you can see slow motion really helps, but a great landing and really good symmetry when she lands towards the left. It's a bit of like mimicking the turn towards the right, you could say. And as she comes around on the next direction, lands here, you can see quite clearly where the left leg is A-framing in. Now, by the sounds of it, just because we messaged her before today's session, it sounds like there's something different to watch, so we can always catch up on that. But this is what we're seeing, and this is why the importance of video is so key to how you develop your skiing, because you wouldn't see that, obviously. You probably wouldn't even feel it. You just feel simple jumping side to side. But on there, you can see something that's obviously showing an area that needs development. Going to just do another jump here coming through. Again, good position, and there you can see once again the symmetry's not quite there on the landing as she lands over towards that side, sort of mimicking what the left turn would look like in a skiing. So we've been getting quite a few good results from this, and I'll come back to one other point in a minute, but I'm going to show you some video. This is what our setup in the summer. So at the end of July, we'll be kicking our skiing off again, which obviously we're super excited about, and I'm sure a lot of you guys are, who are coming out to ski. This is the garage in the Monrev Hotel downstairs, and we often use this to work on the bounding exercises and a bit of the plyometrics work, but pulling out again all of those areas that we've looked at on previous weeks. And you can see here, just jumping coming through. I'll put that on quiet. Here we go. So jumping through, landing there, not much work going on in terms of awareness of how the legs are working, you know, in a way that they should be simulated for skiing. But after a couple of sessions, just watch this one here coming through. So really good work, really good rebound, and also the posture. So the other thing we didn't mention last week, which is what we want to try and sort of talk through with you guys, the posture is super important, because when a lot of people try to push through on this exercise, we noticed a lot of people were trying to use their arms to try and throw their hips and to try and throw their body and project into the new direction. And the quieter you can get with your arms, the more you're going to switch on your legs. And we obviously talked about that last week with flexion extension. So the performance that comes out of this is fantastic. Jumping side to side, landing in symmetry. You can see Jordan there from our team who's running the session. But just great work, you know. So something was really tuned in. Took a bit of time to work towards it, which is obviously why we're encouraging everyone to try and work on this while we're not skiing. But that was the result of precision work. It did reflect in the skiing as well. So when turns were initiated, there was much less splitting of the feet. I'm going to show you some ski turns in a minute, but just coming down here. So as we've said, setting the task and working through video analysis is not about sort of trying to pick out sometimes 20 different things you could sort of put with the run. But usually we try and pull 1 or 2 points out, you know, and generally go for the most important aspect that will make the biggest change. So I'm going to show you one of the guys here. I think this was someone who was in Rob's group earlier in the season. Skiing through some variable terrain. Pretty good posture actually. You know, the arms are working well. What you can tell, which you couldn't tell from the front angle, that's why it's always useful when you're videoing, if you're videoing your partner or friends, you know, try and get a front angle shot so you can really work out what the angulation feels like. But also when Jay's coming past the camera here, let's have a look. You can see there, just taking that back a few frames, going into that right hand turn. A lot of flexing at the knee joint, not so much matching at the ankle, but you know, a lot of a flex going on there to sit down in the back position. This skier is obviously quite a good skier. Comes into the next turn and gets back up on top of the skis. But the problem you've got there is that when you make that movement, when you see flex patterns work like that, you've got to get back into the balance position, and that takes time. So if you happen to be going at a higher speed or hit something suddenly when you're in that backseat position, that's obviously where you're going to be pushed out of balance, and sometimes you can't recover from that. But to come into the turn, gets back on it, but the body weight there is definitely back on the skis. Now, if you remember from week 1, we went away from obviously the slopes we were working on, off-mountain exercises, but we talked about boot flexibility, and we showed some videos from that. There's a lot of work that can be done. Just bringing the ski boot over here. You can obviously see quite close up there how the boot's put together, and you've got your hinges here pulling the lower part of the boot and the upper boot together. You've also got those 2 bolts at the back that control the flex and rebound of the boot. And obviously doing the boot up correctly and everything like that makes a huge amount of importance. Plus having the power strap done up correctly. So when this is around here in the right position and pulled around and it's holding the boot together well at the top, ideally the skier is going to put flex through the boot, and the ankle and the knees and the hips all flex together in relation to each other. But what's happening here is, you know, I think it was Jay, it's a very good, a dear friend of ours, been skiing with the academy for many, many years, and is over in Aosta direction. But here is an example where you would, if you're working on analysing your partner or your colleague, you'd do your check, you'd go away, and you'd first of all make sure the skier or the person can flex that ski boot comfortably off of snow. And And then you'd work out, obviously, from the second layer of it, you'd go and look at the way the body functions outside of the ski boot to make sure that there's no tightness in the calf. And then the job there is a bit like we were talking with the boot fitters over these sessions. I know Alex always tunes in, who works with me on my boots, and obviously, a lot of people have been asking as well from our Verbier connection from Dorian. Those guys would then go and look at the position of the skier in the boot, look at the footbed, making sure the ski is not restricted in any way and can free flex. But that's just a classic example here of where you would try and refer back to the exercises or back to the webinars. That's a week 1 webinar. Okay, so if you're looking at on the YouTube channel on here, work your way through the process of developing the flex pattern. Because actually, the way Jay's skiing, I mean, he's skiing on variable terrain in pretty flat light, you could say there. He's actually handling himself pretty well, carrying, quite strong speed. And he's carving, so there's some really good work going on with his skiing from that point of view. But you can see there's a restriction in the flex pattern down at the ankle. So that's a really easy one to spot. Going to go through and look at some skiers working here. Here's some great turns. I'm trying to think who that is, but I know it's one of the guys, I think, from our level 3 course. Just looking at the angles. So on a positive side here, what you're going to try and pull out of the skier is a demonstration of what great angle they're making. If you can see that close on the screen, I'll turn the brightness up if you struggle. But really good work of the carving action of the ski, and holding a really nice line. The area that a skier like that would develop and would push would be a progressive movement. So sometimes what we spot in skiers is they get a great carve going on, and like I say, that's one of the level 3, level 4 students going through the turns. Sometimes in that position, especially when the ski, because of the way the geometry of the ski's built, it's going to rail for you. It's going to make a really nice shape in the snow. The skier might want to then learn to try and develop a more of a forwards and backwards movement. And that's usually what you'd learn to try and do with someone at that level of skiing. It's a fantastic demonstration of really good carving. And if that person's going to get himself into GS courses or work towards speed tests, that skier would then start to make sure that at the start of the turn, they're really getting their body forwards and across the ski, trying to bend the ski to greater degrees. And that's what we were talking about. I think it was on week 4 or week 5's webinar to do with leg extension and how to get a skier to really use the length of the ski. So the ski is not just laterally moving across, which I think that's pretty much on a level of excellence there, what we're seeing, but also forwards and backwards, really key. Looking at another skier coming through here, I mean, this is really getting you in the mood for skiing. Really lovely day in Verbier, skiing some of the off-piste backcountry terrain, working their way through. I think this is Ken. Ken's a really good skier, has worked his way through the different levels of the ski instructor system. He's now internationally qualified, which is fantastic, and a really a good demonstrator. So we know Ken's a good skier. As he comes through here, really picking out the positive. He's going through some big pressure absorption, pressure shocks, and where a lot of skiers, if you take this back here, a lot of skiers sometimes, and I'm going to sort of relate this to webinar 6. Webinar 6, we talked about core activation and the sort of, being able to go through movement patterns. Not just core strength, core strength and doing planks is fantastic, and there's loads of variations you can do for that, and preferably you'll be doing your planks on the move. But what Ken's got here, in a fantastic way, is what we talked about, that the idea that you can activate your core, but still make really good movements, away from it. So the legs are working, absorbing, extending. But as he goes through here, where a lot of skiers would be hitting, high pressure there, that's where a lot of skiers would get caught out. He's got his core activated, and it's getting him through that immense pressure. And you can see he rides out the turn here. I'm just replaying it as well because I'm sort of getting quite jealous watching him ski. So I can't wait to get back into this stuff. But here you go. So works his way through the turn. Arm position's good. So a lot of the time, if people are not fully in balance, you might see their arms sort of dropping, the inside hand dropping on one side. But comes into this big pressure bank here, boom, hits the powder and drives away from it. You can see great forms kept here, arms in a really good even position. Ken's obviously done a lot of work with the team at the level 3, level 4 training groups. And as a result, you know, this is where a lot of those drills and exercises and things that you see skiers working on piece, showing itself in really good form there. Well done, Ken. Another skier coming through here, and this one is going to relate to week 2, which I think we were talking about symmetry. Really good carve, really good position. Excellent turns being made there. Coming through on the turn towards the right. Just a slightly different position you can see in the legs. Now, you know, great work though. You know, so if you're looking at the outside leg, the left leg of the turn, and the angles being made here, really nice position in the body. All we've got to try and work out there is that's obviously a skier that's been left in a slight A-frame. Sometimes, to do with the speeds you're travelling at and the terrain you're on, sometimes it's difficult to avoid a slight A-frame. And there's no harm in that sometimes, but if that skier is developing and working towards the level 3 and level 4 of the ski instructor side, or just wants to go and take that element of carving into powder, you guys will know from that session we ran to do with the symmetry and lateral control, again on webinar week 2, that the skis are not going to be tracking at the same angle. So as he comes through the turn, because of the angle of these lower legs, you can see they're up to the knee, that's going to put the skis at slightly different angles. And when you spot a video analysis session, whether it's with yourself, looking at your own footage, or looking at one of your colleagues, you've got to know that before you go and sort of start to free ride and cruise through powder, that's the kind of stance that's going to get a skier caught out. But, you know, again, great to watch, really good carved turns, working their way through there in the Le Chaux area, or Lac de Vaux area in Verbier. Brilliant. Got another skier coming into the powder, again, making me jealous watching this. Nice turns coming through. Let's have a look. Slightly back seat. You know, an identifier for that one is obviously coming out of the turn where the pressure built up. When the pressure builds up, sometimes people don't react to it. They can sometimes squat. Always got to be pushing towards that, sensing the pressure, knowing that it's not just a squat or a sit down, because you know what the pressure can sometimes do. Sometimes you have to push back against it. But great skiing, great arm posture there. So just coming into this turn, going to look at this. And we talked about Ken earlier, the guy in the yellow jacket, and we talked about how well his arms and the position of his arms, how well it played for him through that off-piste run. It's going to show you another skier coming through here. Just as you watch the entry into this turn, keep an eye on the left arm. Left arm's dropping, and the inside leg is getting a little bit stuck in the turn. You could say that as this skier went into, I mean, their right-hand turn was fantastic. As they came into the left turn and started to initiate the left turn, there was a tip of the upper body and a drop of the inside hand. Now, whether it's to do with not engaging that new leg going into the turn, or whether there's a slight split in the stance, that's something you'd identify. It's a little bit of both. But as they're coming into the new turn, the upper body's tipped inside. Too much pressure, you could say, on the inside leg. It's getting squashed and it's getting delayed and lagged because of it. Great skier though, so he corrects it, gets back on and manages to carve out a great turn. Fantastic shot there. God, look at that. Brilliant. Comes into it. We're going to get critical. Comes into the turn. Again, slight bit of upper body tip. If you want to sort of pull a marker, sometimes what's quite useful in video analysis is getting almost like a ruler stick, a meter rule stick, and trying to put the line across, you know, how the upper body is it in balance like Ken's was earlier. There's a slight bit of tip here as you're coming through it, and you can see again, it's just caused a slight delay. So the skis are not true parallel. However, great skier comes through and gets there. Yeah, I mean, that's almost a photo session there to try and make a modelling shot for the brand of skis they're on. But again, going into the last turn, a little bit of upper body rotation. If anyone's watching this, we haven't named you. I mean, I know some of the skiers, I don't know everyone that we're looking at. Rob sent me across some footage from this season. Feel free to write in your comments and name the person. There's no shaming going on today. Everyone's skiing so well. And obviously there, we're just watching some awesome shredding. Okay, so coming through here. Going to take that turn back. Coming into, I would say this one's the the turn that needs a little bit of attention, the entry, a little bit of upper body movement, you know, so that leg, the right leg, needs to be engaged in the turn. It's almost like rather than standing against the right ski, the skiers actually turning their body away from the ski. And again, when that happens, the upper body starts to rotate. And it's why we go through a lot of these drills. You know, we talked about leg steering action, and I think that was on webinar 3. And the leg steering action here might show a sign that if we were to do the test, that range test, you remember when we sort of held the hips still and we worked a rotation in each direction. We said, you know, most skiers need to get towards 70 degrees in each direction. That's the sort of one where you might be thinking, actually, does that right leg have the capability to step inside, to rotate inside? Because what looks like is happening as he goes towards the left-hand turn, the upper body and everything's turning in that direction. Good correction on there. That's the solid turn, comes through brilliantly. Slight split. So just watch that change again. So coming towards the end of that turn, you got a really nice position. You know, you can talk about a combination of a couple of things here, but as he comes through, the lateral control down at the feet is splitting wider. You know, obviously as you get towards the end of the turn, you've got to deal with pressure. He's got a good edge angle, could do with a bit more angulation in the body, you know, to try and hold that platform. But the skis are splitting, it's making it the entry into the next turn a little bit more tricky, a little bit more challenging. But again, you know, we're watching good skiers here, they're surviving in the powder. He manages to make the correction. The thing about this is when you break down the video analysis, wouldn't it be great if you could just avoid that once you've seen it, just avoid that happening and work on exercises. I'm going to refer you back to a couple of different things on here. Webinar 4, we talked about the importance of getting that hip to move and angulation. And on here, you know, no two ways about it. You could definitely work on practicing. If it's your left-hand turn that's having that split on entry before the hip comes over, try and work on getting that pillow down the side of the hip and falling against the wall. Now, we did work on that, and we also identified, a lot of people that worked on that at home, identified from webinar 4 and webinar 5 that it's not just a given that you're just going to fall against the wall with the pillow. One side will have a delay, and often does. And then the bit that helps that is looking at, so, you know, adding a little bit of leg extension into it. So that's what we can be looking at from that run there. But everybody watching this just can't wait to get back on skis. I know, you know, it's making me want to go skiing. We're hearing, you know, that the Zermatt Glacier is supposed to be opening this weekend. Not sure how they're going to get on in terms of how the lift queues work or people barging in the lift queues. I think they're going to have to be super strict. But we're heading over there in July to ski. And I know a lot of you guys in the UK have got your 14-day quarantine or lockdown, you know, once you travel. The sooner we hear about that information, and if that does change, I know a lot of you guys are already ready to sort of push the button and travel across, and some people have already, you know, booked onto that. So do ask the question, you know, watch the webcams, because I can only imagine if it's it tipped down quite a lot of rain here yesterday, and it would have definitely snowed up on the upper slopes. Really nice work, you know. So this skier here is holding, going for a lot of shock, but where we've seen skiers split a fair amount of times in between turns, he's actually holding a really nice stance width. That's great work. Okay, so just going to sort of show what you can do here. So this one was Jay's run. We looked at this earlier on in the session, you know, skiing through the terrain nicely, you know, but that's the position. So you can work on readdressing a couple of things. Obviously, webinar 1, boot flex, going through to webinar 5, which is to do with leg extension here, just trying to get up on top of the skis would be a big help. Look at that snow. I think the guys are probably skiing in Gentiane or Tortan there in Verbier. So nice. Okay, strong skier coming into it, really nice work. Going to look at symmetry here, coming into the turn. So the lateral control is not just about the focus on, sometimes people can fall into an A-frame. It's how the stance width drifts in, whether the legs are stabilized. And you imagine doing a lunge at yoga or something like that. When people sometimes go down to do a one-legged lunge, you feel it. If you're doing it slowly and sort of looking at yourself and looking in the mirror is quite useful. Not everyone can go down and do a one-legged lunge and have the leg laterally stable. A lot of people wobble in those positions. I know I do sometimes in yoga. Again, looking at people, how they control the width and how they control the symmetry in their legs. And we talked about it, jumping side to side, bounding left, bounding right. They're the areas where when you perfect that kind of stuff, and we were just looking at the great example from Adrian Hamilton at the start of the session. Adrian doesn't just wake up and do that perfectly straight away. He works on it. He goes away as an instructor and puts time and dedication into it, and he comes back with a result that would translate directly into his skiing. The same thing here. So recommendation, as this lady's coming through skiing, again, killing it in the powder, beautiful turns, but coming into the turn there, you can just see the tips of the skis and the break-in symmetry. Now she's already skiing at a really good level. She's already charging down, loving, taking advantage of the powder. But you imagine, if you could get this area of the skiing fixed or the symmetry fixed, how much more she'd get from it. The speed of her turns would go up. The safety element of the torque that goes through the knee joint when you're making your turns would be reduced. So she'd be protecting her body as well. So some work that would be really useful for her is to go through some jumping exercises, looking at the symmetry, maybe working with some bands around the knees and the feet. And also, think about things like the one-legged lunge to see if you can go through that movement pattern with stability, or does it have a wobble when you're going through it? We also, obviously from webinar 2, we gave the exercise, like the 10-second test of putting 2 slider pads on the floor or whatever surface where there's hardly any friction, and really slowly pulling your feet towards each other. And quite a lot of the time, with many people we practice this on, the legs wobble. So this is something where that would really help the skier, but brilliant work. But just a little bit of a lack of symmetry and a bit of attention and awareness would just make a huge difference there. Quality turns, God, I want to go skiing so badly. The skier charging down the pow. I just sit and watch those turns being made. That's awesome. Look at that. So from this week's session, guys, it's nearly 11:30. I'm just going to make the point. Try to use a task this week to go away. Look back in your video archives. Because of mobile phones and what people can do these days, it's very easy for people to video themselves. I'm sure you guys have got videos that you can use. And if you request it, we've obviously got archives of some people that have skied on the courses during this winter. Take your video footage away, identify from your video footage from one of the webinars. We've got obviously 9 weeks of webinars. The last 2 weeks are sort of things, much more in the plyometrics side, but, also the identifiers. You've got range tests and you've got the biomechanics tests that you can do and the strength tests. So there's quite a lot to find in your skiing to go away and look at it. Obviously, we can cross that over, keep the conversations coming in. If it's about boots, we've obviously got people we can refer you to and people that get involved through the chat. And if it's about skis, was talking to Ed about skis. So a lot of people do ask us this question on kit. And a classic thing, probably to compare it to, it's a bit like when you buy a bike, do you go for the large size frame or the medium size frame? We had Ed, one of our academy skiers, who's just about to purchase or has already purchased a pair of, do I go for the 178 or do I go for the 184? He sent in some video of him skiing. His video was really interesting. By identifying the video to see his level and then assessing his height and his body weight, and then the kind of, the person he was. Is he an athletic person or is he not so athletic? Does he train? We identified it was worth the upgrade to the 184 length of ski, because with a little bit of work in his technique on one of his turns, and he knows what it is now, he'll be able to go away and actually develop his skiing and still work on some dry land exercises. But he went for the 184. So that's the other thing these sessions are here for, guys. We can help you with analysis, not just on your technique, but on your equipment. And when you're going to purchase new skis, new boots, where do you go? What flex rating do you go for? And what length of ski? So they've been beneficial in that sense. So that's the task for the week. Go away, analyze your video, and then see if you can develop your own skiing and make corrections and make developments and improvement on performance using one of the 9 webinars. Excellent, guys. Well, thanks for tuning into the session. We'll see you next week. We don't know what sort of session it's going to be, but there's no doubt Rob will probably be pinging out an email on Thursday or Wednesday, letting you know what it's going to be. And we look forward to getting your videos in and seeing your development. Remember, it's always the hashtag Ski Technique Lab. And like we said at the start of the session, thanks to Vocal, Marco Del Bello, Knight Frank, our Gentex, and Planks Clothing for looking after us, making sure these sessions go ahead. Nice one, guys. Have a great week, and we look forward to seeing you next week. Cheers.